Harbaugh's history, Michigan, Stanford, everywhere he's been, year 2 is the pop year. He took over the worst team in the league, got him to the playoffs. That team is going to pop with more of his brilliance in the building for a year. So it's okay.
Listen, at one point, I like Harbaugh, and I agreed with you last year that the Chargers could be a playoff team. But at some point, I'm just curious, is Justin Herbert going to have to earn this benefit of the doubt? Justin Herbert's calling card last year was, doesn't make mistakes, only 2 interceptions all season. And then in the playoff game, he threw more picks in that game than he did all year long. And I like Harbaugh as well. I don't think you think he's better than Andy Reid. So, like, at what point does Justin Herbert have to actually live up to the billing that you have given him for the last half decade? Like, at some point, he's got to, actually play well in a big spot. Once. He's been in the league 5 years. I feel like that's a fair ask. Once. Play big in a big spot.
Well,
right?
This is the year. Stuff isn't true until it happens. And
yeah. Okay. It's so funny because I made a video the other day about the unfairness of creating this narrative with Herbert and Harbaugh and the Chargers, of kind of like how this was the first time Harbaugh was, the first year that Harbaugh was there, and he was taking over a bad team, a bottom team, from the year before in 23 into 24, that this team needed to be completely revamped, rebuilt, etc. Actually have a culture, an identity, both offensively, defensively. Like, the team was a mess. And that they were now trying to create this narrative of like, well, Herbert has everything that he wants, and Harbaugh has the quarterback that he wants, so like, there's no excuse for them not to win. And it's kind of like, whoa, like, easy there. Like, what are we doing here? It's year 1. This team was a mess. It's going to take a second to kind of, get this thing going. And it's so perfect because now I come across this clip and I see, Nick Wright doing that essentially. He's like, well, sooner than later, we got to see Herbert step up and play big in a big moment. And it's like, last year was the first year that he finally had a legitimate coach. Now, the problem is that he didn't have a roster to go along with that. And he says, like, oh, he threw all these interceptions. They had nothing going for them. First off, that Texans defense was pretty good. And I'm not going to act like that was a great game for the Chargers or for Justin Herbert for that matter. But again, Justin Herbert's essentially only weapon in that game is like a 6-foot slot receiver who's a rookie. Like, there's only so much to do in that situation, quite frankly. And it really was. Like, there was a lot of pressure for Justin Herbert just to kind of, like, let it rip and force throws. And a couple of those turnovers really could have gone in a different direction, quite frankly. And I don't even necessarily 100% lump on Justin Herbert. I think that's, greatly exaggerated. Again, I'm not going to act like he played this awesome game, that he secretly played a great game. I'm not making that argument either. But to try to bury him in this way is ridiculous. Or try to blame him for the loss against the Jags years ago. Like, it's just not on him. And people seem to be so disconnected with the timeline of Justin Herbert and and the Chargers. It was like he either had like a great coordinator in Shane Steichen and had a lot of success there, but then again, had a wonky head coach, had an objectively bad head coach. If you finally did have some weapons and a decent, offense, he either then didn't have the coordinator to go along with it, or there was just, inconsistency in terms of the injuries that either he unfortunately, dealt with, or his actual weapons now. Like, he's never been able to just have consistency, high level coaching with decent players and have them stay healthy. I mean, even Herbert this last season had to deal with his own individual injuries, or also the injuries of either his running back, his wide receiver. He was dealing with a whole bunch of rookies on that roster as well. It's a lot. And when you're dealing with now all these rookies in a playoff game, yeah, even that O-line that was great all year got burned. They had their welcome to the NFL moment against a great defense in the Houston Texans. So, I just don't feel as though we're actually having the correct and honest conversation about this timeline. So it's so unfair to be like, eventually you're gonna have to see Justin Herbert, and it's like the dude was not in a good situation. It's just a fact, okay? You're not going to tell me, and now since it is Nick Wright, I am going to bring up the coveted Patrick Mahomes, which they ended up doing, and I cut it short because they started fighting over Patrick Mahomes, which I don't feel like getting into. But Patrick Mahomes, if he was drafted, if he went to the Chargers and had the exact same coaches and the exact same players, and essentially the exact same timeline that Herbert had, he's not winning Super Bowls. He would not have a single He's not winning a Super Bowl with Staley. It's just not happening. Just not happening. All right. So it's just it's just kind of nonsense. The one thing that I found absurd, and I should play. Actually I am gonna play that clip. I'm gonna cue it up.
Herbert got eaten alive by a Texans team that then got walloped by the Chiefs.
Then got walloped by the Chiefs. We all remember how that game unfolded, right? We remember Travis Kelce being wide open, a massive amount of yak, like it was just all day yards after catch. Some very convenient penalties that then directly led to a touchdown. CJ Stroud playing awful and bad coaching as well. They left CJ Stroud on an island at multiple points in that game. Clock running out, late to the huddle, like all this crazy stuff. And they're just like, rather than call timeout, they're just like, oh, CJ, quickly call hike. And then, him getting walloped. Like, let's be clear about that. That was not some high level game by any stretch of the imagination. Again, Kelce was wide open, getting an insane amount of yards after catch. Which has nothing to do with Patrick Mahomes, and then CJ Stroud being swarmed by the Chiefs defense, nothing to do with Patrick Mahomes. Like, again, so you can't put that on Justin Herbert or anything like that. It's just absurd. And then we know those multiple questionable penalties for the roughing the passer and the late hit, whatever they were officially designated at that time. I already forget, but it was so controversial that everyone had to talk about it. You have Troy Aikman, get audibly upset and annoyed. The TV ref being like, this is not a penalty. So, like, saying that they walloped the Texans, like, who got walloped? The Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That's an actual walloping. The Texans game was just a weird mess of a game and is not an indictment. And the fact that the Chargers struggled and obviously failed to beat the Texans is not, you can't now say, but the Chiefs then beat the Texans and now we're just going to compare that to Justin Herbert. Like, you can't use that as a way to try to bring down Justin Herbert. Doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how Justin Herbert became a quarterback that people look for reasons to pretend that he's not as good, or they keep trying to create this narrative that if he was better, he would have more success. And it's just like, I think a part of it is that when we look at some of these other teams that end up being poorly run, there's, outside of maybe like the Giants, who obviously have a massive market, it's these other teams like Jacksonville, Tennessee, and it just seems like these smaller market, not a lot of energy behind them. You're going to be a lot more forgiving. Like, I feel like if Justin Herbert played for the Tennessee Titans, nobody would be like, oh, if he was better, he would win more. I don't think people would say that. But something about them being in LA or just even in California in general, because even when they were obviously in San Diego, I think there's also a coolness factor to the Chargers. Maybe I'm biased because, I lived in Southern California, but just like, there's just like a more of like a coolness factor to the Chargers. I feel like a lot of the NFL is just waiting for them to like really pop. I don't think anyone's really waiting for like the Tennessee Titans to like get some momentum, or the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, like that's not the impression that I personally get. But I really feel like if he played for a smaller market, and then even New York, like with the Jets or the Giants, like I feel like people are just like, this is such a severely poorly run franchise. Like, the Jets haven't been in the playoffs in like, what is it, like 14 years or something outrageous, and the Giants have just been an absolute mess, and that's only gotten worse as we get like more and more examples of that. Obviously, most recently the Saquon Barkley and all of that type of stuff, and the Daniel Jones mess. But I think, like, unfortunately for Justin Herbert, is that the franchise is popular enough in a big enough area, in a popular enough area, in a desirable area, Southern California, that people don't bring the same level of understanding of what it's like to be in that situation. The Chargers have just been poorly run, and I think they've corrected this. Going out and getting Harbaugh, like, was the decision to make, more than like any other coach that you can, even more than a Ben Johnson at that point. Harbaugh was the hire. There was no other hire to make, and so it was the best hire. I paused it on a weird thing for them. And so I think that has changed significantly. But right, if you're expecting Harbaugh to be able to come in and just year one just magically just lead this team to an AFC Championship game, I mean, like, that's tough. That's not an easy thing to do. I don't care who your quarterback is, especially when you have to clearly rebuild this roster, instill an actual culture, an identity. There's also, and I talked about this in my one video, like, Harbaugh also has to do a lot of, helping these guys unlearn some of the things that they learned that were just fundamentally wrong. It's a messier process. These things are not just plug and play. It's just not how it works. And I just think it's always so misleading or even disingenuous to just be like, well, what the heck? Justin Herbert, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, Justin Herbert's obviously an awesome quarterback. Obviously not perfect, obviously has flaws, has been in a weird, messy situation with the Chargers, inconsistent coaching, inconsistent roster. Could he be a little bit better at certain moments? Absolutely. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, from that viewpoint. And, like, if someone like Nick Wright is willing to give Trevor Lawrence the benefit of the doubt, then in what universe do you not give Justin Herbert the benefit of the doubt? Makes no sense. Trevor Lawrence at least had Doug Peterson, who, love it or hate it, won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. So at the very least knows how to run a franchise, knows how to run a team, knows how to, like, organize practices and meetings. And because sometimes you get coaches, they don't even know how to do that. Staley wasn't very clear that he even knew how to do that. There's a lot of management when you're a head coach. Without a shadow of a doubt, at least you know that Doug Peterson knows how to do that aspect. So it's just like, you can make the argument that Trevor Lawrence had more stability there. So I don't know. But again, he's in Jacksonville. You would make the argument that he got less heat and less criticism than a Justin Herbert. So I don't know. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Colin Cowherd and Nick Wright battling over Justin Herbert and the Chargers, and Colin's obvious high level of confidence behind Chargers popping this coming season? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.